So I'm going to be going over the homework for this week. If you need a specific problem, just fast forward the video to that problem. I'm going to be going through each one individually. Alright, so let's get started. So we're going to be talking about these two things. We're going to be adding partial charges, so either partial positive or partial negative, and we're going to be saying whether it is polar or non-polar. So, let's start with this one. This H and Cl are sharing electrons in this bond. We know that Cl wants the electrons more, so it's going to be a little bit closer to Cl in that bond. That means the Cl is going to have a partial negative charge, and our H is going to have a partial positive charge. If we look and see kind of if we have a positive end and a negative end, because remember, if it has a positive end, and a negative end, that means that it is going to be polar. So, this has a negative end over here. It has a positive end over here, so we can see that it has a positive and a negative end, so this is going to be a polar molecule. Alright, you'll look at this next one. We have two O's that are sharing electrons. You can think to yourself, do either one of these O's want electrons more than the other one? The answer is no, so that means all the electrons are going to be right down the middle of your element. So this one, there's not going to be any unequal sharing. There's going to be no partial positives or partial negatives. So this one's just going to be non-polar, because there's going to be no partial negatives or partial positives. Alright, this next one we have O sharing a bond with H. We know O wants electrons more, so it's going to hold electrons a bit closer in both of these bonds. Since O is holding electrons closer, it's going to have a partially negative charge. H has electrons further away, so it has the partial positive charges. So now we know we have a positive charge on this end of our molecule. We're going to have a negative charge on this end of our molecule. You see that we have a positive end and a negative end, so this one's going to be polar. Okay, because it's following this rule that we wrote up at the top. Alright, we have N sharing bonds with H's. In these bonds, the electrons are going to be closer to our N. Since they're closer to our N is going to have a partial negative charge. Our H's are all going to have a partial positive charge on them. So we know that we have a negative charge kind of up at the top, and that we have this positive charge down at the bottom and to the side. This one has a positive end down here and a negative end up here. So this is going to be polar. Alright, this next one is a little bit tricky with the C's and Cl's. So in these bonds, Cl wants electrons more. So it's going to hold electrons closer in all those Cl's. So each of these Cl's, since they have electrons closer, are going to have a negative charge on them. This C in the middle has electrons further away, so it's going to have a partial positive charge on it. So the Cl, I have the eraser on. Alright, the Cl, or the C in the middle is going to have partial positive charge. The Cl's on the outside are going to have partial negative charges. Now you notice that this one, it does not have a positive and negative end. Alright, it has a fully negative circle around it. So this one's actually going to be non-polar. Even though it has charges, it still is not going to have any polarity because it doesn't have a positive and a negative end. Alright, we have an H sharing with F. We know F wants electrons more. If you're struggling with that, it's because on your periodic table, if you find something over on this side, it wants electrons more. So H is over here, F is all the way over here, and so F is going to want electrons more. So F is going to be partially negative, H is going to be partially positive. So we're going to have a negative, and we're going to have a positive. So you see how we have a negative end and a positive end now? So this is going to be polar. Alright, we have N. N's are sharing electrons. Since N's are the same element, they share electrons all right down the middle. And so there's going to be no partial negative, partial positive. It's all going to be the same. And so this is going to be non-polar. Alright, we have C. So when C shares with H's, these ones have no charge to them. C's and H's share equally. That was in our notes. So let's just look at the CCl bond. Alright, and in our CCl bond, Cl wants electrons more, so it's going to hold electrons closer. So it's going to have a partially negative end. This C is going to have a partially positive end. So when we draw in, we have our partial positive on this side, and we have a partial negative over here. So you'll see we have a positive end and a negative end, so this one's going to be polar. Alright, in these bonds, we have C sharing with O. O wants electrons more, so it's going to hold electrons a little bit closer to it than the C is. So, since it's holding electrons closer, it's going to have a partially negative on both sides and a partially positive in the middle. So we'll have a negative, and then we'll have a positive going down the middle. You'll notice that this doesn't have a positive and a negative end, so this one is going to be non-polar. Alright, down here you have B sharing with F's. The F's want electrons more, so they have the electrons closer. That means they have the partial negative charges on them. Your B wants electrons less, so it's going to have a partially positive charge on it. So you have a partial positive in the middle, and you have these partial negatives on the outside. And again, this is similar to our earlier one, where this is actually going to be non-polar because it doesn't have a positive and a negative end. It just has that negative all on the outside. Okay, these last two are really tricky. No matter what you put, I will give you credit because we didn't get to talk about them that in depth in class. But we know that when O and C share a bond, that the oxygen is going to have electrons closer to it. So this is going to have a partially negative charge. This C is going to have a partially positive charge, and it is actually going to share that partial positive with all of these other elements around it. This O is going to have a partial negative charge, and it's going to be a pretty big partial negative charge, so it is going to have a big partial negative charge. So even though we have an H right here, it's still going to have a partial negative charge on that end. And so this one's going to actually be a polar molecule. Now, again, if you said non-polar, that's okay too, but make sure that you at least have these partial positives and negatives written into your answer for credit. All right, this last one, we're just going to look at these C and O bonds. So O is going to have the electrons closer, so it's going to have partially negative. The C's are going to have partial positive because they have them further away. So we have this negative mass in the center, and then we have these positives on the outside. Since there's no positive and negative end, this one's actually going to be non-polar. Alright, I know this video is really quick, so watch it again or go back and watch certain ones that you need help with to figure them out. Please email me with any questions, and I hope that this is something you guys are now starting to understand better.